Welcome everyone to today's Cancer Solar Festival gathering. It's wonderful to meet today for this celebration of light, and the mantra of Cancer is, of course, we build a lighted house and therein dwell. So I invite you to just take a moment to look through the video gallery to see who's in the room with us, in the garden with us, and to make eye contact wherever possible. Before we get things underway, we will light a candle, which is what we're going to be doing every time we gather from now on. So as we do this, we invite you to visualize everyone in this space in their different parts of the world, bringing light into their particular corner. And that light spreading outwards from our separate rooms into the circle beyond this gathering space, and in ever widening circles, lighting the world of humanity and to all the kingdoms of nature, for whom light is a vital expression and essential part of well-being. So we thank you for being with us tonight, today, this morning, this afternoon, and ask for the blessings of the subtle beings on us as we meet and dialogue together. Katja will lead us in a short alignment.
Okay, thank you. So let's recognize our presence as a group. The being of our group soul. The presence of the new group. And the great cycle of life. 60 billion of monads incarnated and out of incarnation. That amazing house where we live and dwell. And as we prepare to work, let's read the mantra of a disciple, which we, as builders of that house, use. I am the point of light within the greater light. I'm a stream of loving energy within the stream of love divine. I am a point of sacrificial fire, focused within the fiery will of God. And thus, I stand. I am a way by which man may achieve. I am the source of strength, enabling them to stand. I am a beam of light, shining upon their way. and thus I stand, and standing thus revolve, and tread this way, the way of man, and know the ways of God, and thus I stand. So, in the group heart, we stand and work together. Over to you, Sharon.
Thank you, Kata. Beautiful. Welcome, everyone. We are so glad to have you here. If you hear birds, that's out my backyard. We are so happy to have Kathy Newburn and Michael Robbins with us. I think they really need no introduction, particularly. But part of the reason we wanted these two in particular here is Michael has Cancer rising, Kathy has Cancer moon. So in speaking about the lighted house, I can't think of two more eminently qualified and practical people to begin our conversation. And so in keeping with our pattern this year, we'll have about the first 20 minutes or so with Kathy and Michael just chatting about what is true now about the state of the lighted house and manifested humanity. Then we'll have a short meditative break and some silence. And we'll come back in the second part to look at practical, what is the next right thing, the next right step. And as we are also trying to encourage conversation and questions, we would love you to use the chat if you have a comment or a question that you would like to ask. I'll monitor it as best I can, and if appropriate, we'll have you come out and ask the question so that we are at least making an attempt to use this platform in a more conversational way. So I will, Michael, let's start with you. And both of you can just.
I guess Kathy and I are used to talking to each other.
Yes, I think you've probably done it a few times, so I don't think you need much guidance.
many years. And what is true now? I'll just say a couple of things. We can go back and forth, Kathy. What is true now is that there is this is all my own point of view, of course. We can only share what we are perceiving. But there is a tremendous battle occurring within humanity. It involves, of course, the elemental kingdoms, the kingdoms for which humanity is the macrocosm. So it's serious all the way down, and to a degree, in terms of the higher points of tension. What is happening, in my view, is that there is a battle between the angel of the presence of humanity, and probably within each one of us, and the as yet unredeemed dweller on the threshold of humanity. It has not yet acquiesced to the way of the angel of the presence. One day, that personality, which basically is the dweller, is supposed to be an efficient instrument for the expression of the angel. But right now, there is an attack, in my view, of the counterforce, which is trying to prevent that union between the two aspects. And our success will be if, as members of the new group of world servers, or at least aspiring to be so, we can begin to bring the people whose consciousness represents more the dweller into a state of receptivity to the angel. And then I think real progress will occur. So all over the world, it's a battle between, well, let me put it this way, between democracy and authoritarianism. Basically, the misuse of the first ray and the sixth ray, and the attempt to bring the second ray into expression far more widely. Well, I think that's enough for me to say at the moment. I'm happy to turn it over to Kathy.
Kathy, I see you nodding your head.
No.
Just little nods here. Yeah.
No, I'm just listening.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a really big question, obviously. So that's why I hesitate to even say anything, because.
And it is a big question. I would just say that, you know, we understand it is a huge question, and perhaps we can, you know, just kind of find one thing for today, you know, that we can work with and turn into a practical practice for our own lives. So if there's one among the huge question or one part of it.
Well, I guess when I was thinking about it ahead of time, I thought that, you know, that we're always told to take what's ever going on in the world and try and adapt it to our own lives. And so from a more macrocosmic level, we know that we're passing between two ages. It's one of the basic fundamentals of our teachings, that we have one foot in Pisces still very much, and we have another stretching towards Aquarius. But we also know that the middle ground between the two is governed by Libra. And so that's an energy that we really have to take into our consideration as governing this period. And we need, I think, to cultivate the qualities of that energy, which is to seek to blend and fuse these two opposites, astrological energies, but also two ray energies, outgoing 6, incoming 7. And we can't really place ourselves in either foothold really strongly, because then we'd be missing the opportunity of the present, which is to blend and fuse the two. And so likewise, when we look out across the world, I guess to me it means to try and understand the opposite sides, try and not get too caught up into the tremendous polarization that's going on at this time, and just seek to understand. I think that's what's true for me right now, to seek to understand.
You know, loving understanding. I'm thinking about harmlessness here for a minute. And in esoteric healing, it talks about 3 requirements, and the first one is basically a sense of proportion, which is a balance and very Libran thing. And then a completed point of view, and then divine understanding. So Libra, we're told, is growing more powerful in the planetary horoscope all the time. Of course, we would expect it to a certain extent, because it's part of the air sign triplicity. And will be especially important, I think, in this kind of era of brotherhood under Venus at the end, the last 720 years or so of the age of Aquarius. But even right now, just the way you say, Kathy, it's the bridge. And we need, Libra does have a second ray quality to it, as well as the third ray. Well, and of course it has the first ray of justice as well. Somehow it manages all the three major rays. And there is a need for a more proportional point of view about people, trying to understand what they're really going through and learning, as the Christ has taught us, about identifying with them. That's another Libra thing that the great Lord is able to teach us at this point. Right now, so much Mars, so much fragmentation, so much we're right, you're wrong, and so forth, and so many selfish people. Not enough yet who are kind to their fellow human beings and actually love them. We in ourselves and in humanity who can receive it, we have to kill out this selfishness, which is manifesting, what shall we say, it's manifesting in government a lot, in churches a lot. It's manifesting financially to a considerable degree. People have a wrong sense of who they really are. And of course, they act according to it. And that's where our role comes in. Well, of course, I know I'm venturing for a moment into the second part there. But let's just say how to end this almost inevitable fragmentation which occurs when the lords of materialism attack, sensing that their days are numbered. So I just want to concur with you that Libra is really an important sign at this time, and it will grow in importance throughout the Aquarian age, at least in my view.
And Christine is, I won't have you come out, Christine. Christine Moore has asked if it's based in fear, Michael. Is this based in fear? And we'll take that kind of as an ending to this part, because I think there's a lot already in there. But if you can address the fear piece or where you think that is, and you and Kathy.
Sure. Fear is the result of wrong identification. We think we are a mortal, perishable unit that must preserve its integrity at all costs. And we don't understand that we're ever so much more than that tiny emanation that we usually think we are, and for which we usually fear a great deal. We fear its annihilation. But DK says, there is no death. He repeats that, there is no death. And that fear of annihilation and of the annihilation of one's way of life is one of the principles that forces people to hang on to the past, because at least they know something about it, and tremble when it comes to the possibility of moving ahead into a wider identification. That's my view. Yes, fear is strong.
It sounds very much like the Cancerian underbelly. Yeah, right.
It is.
It's very Cancerian quality of fear and protecting and security and.
Right. That's correct. That's correct. That fear stuff shows up a lot in the sign Cancer. Yes, I think so.
Kathy, do you have anything to add to that? And before we go to meditation?
Well, yeah, I think fear of death in particular is one of the biggest glamours, I guess. The Tibetan has said that, and we certainly perhaps have experienced that in our own lives. And when looking around the world at this time, we can see that that's a mass thought form. But so, yeah, I guess each one of us, you were saying earlier, to make it practical, each one of us, you know, confronting that fear of death can perhaps help to free us to live more courageous lives, you know.
Yeah, he did say, didn't he? You know, DK every once in a while comes out with some nice humor, you know, and he says, "Oh, I could wish you were all younger and more courageous." Maybe we have to take that in for ourselves as well. Not too much we can do about the age of the body, but we can. But the courage part, we can do something about
take it into Leo, right? That's our part. Yeah,
it.
beautiful.
Leo helps.
Yeah, exactly. So Sasha, put a little note on that one for next month. So that, I think, gives us, I hope for everyone there, can you just do thumbs up if I can see if that gives you something to think about, something manageable, practical. Can you put a yes or one in the chat? Say, yeah, that there's something in what we just heard that I can now work with in meditation. Use the chat and say me or yes or just sit there. There we go. Thank you, Margot. Awesome. Okay, good. All right. So, Michael, so everyone will, you can leave your video on if you want or go off, but we're going to go into a short meditation, which will lead us into what is the next right step. And I'll leave the meditation to Michael. And I will leave a little bit of silence after before we come back, so that if you have, I know for me, ideas started coming about where I can work. You might want to have a journal by your side and write down a couple of notes. So, Michael, I'll leave it to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did you want about 5 minutes worth or 7 minutes?
7 minutes, and then we'll leave a few minutes silence, and yeah.
Okay.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Well, let's think for a moment about the various lighted houses that we are building. The first one that comes to mind will be the lighted house of the personality responsive to the angel of the presence. Usually, dark light characterizes the personality, and it has to shine. So that's, in a way, our first task. That, well, the old saying, Vulcan polishes or burnishes the shield of Mars, Mars ruling the entire personality. But we can't really do that unless we manage to start building the very first part of the Antikarana from the mental unit into the soul on the third or second subplane of the mental plane. And for people like ourselves, it should be work increasingly on the second subplane. And something there begins to be our point of view, and a radiance emanates from the soul, from the angel, from the master, and from our own projected monad into the jewel in the lotus. And it begins to pour. Imagine, everybody, that it begins to pour with less and less resistance into the personality, brightening it all the time. So we begin to shine and can be much more helpful as we revolve upon the pedestal of light and turning the other way and help those in our own way, however we do it, on the upward coming path. So this leads us one day, hopefully not too long from now, into the transfigured state after we prove ourselves in the desert. And many other lighted houses are also built. We don't have to be too concerned with them right now. But the lighted house of the monad, the temple of Ezekiel, which in a way controls the whole process of everything below it. So imagine that your radiance is increasing, your magnetic power, your love, your power to see the whole as one of the prominent Cancer mantras. And we'll spend just some silence, a little silence, watching the radiance increase, because we're learning first to see things happening as if we were the soul on its own plane, or at least the angel of the presence. We're learning how to see from within the angel of the presence, and everything looks different and real, and not just intellectual, but factual. So we'll spend just a few moments, a little bit in silence, as we watch for each one of us and for our groups, and finally, for our nations and for humanity as a whole, as we watch the radiance grow. Use your imagination. And the result will be that a whole new point of tension called focused immovable will become our customary point of tension. And different experiences will be ours as we look on at that with which we used to identify, namely the personality, but now no longer identify with, because we have stabilized ourselves within the point of view of what we can generally call the soul. So on this kind of last day of the 5-day process for the sign Cancer, we try to develop a new, realistic soul sensitivity, which really changes our point of view. Oh. Mhm. So this little meditation is concluded, and if there is music, then this would be the time, I suppose.
Sometimes would have my flute here, Michael, but I didn't have it out here today. So we'll thank you. You can maybe hear the wind and be that be the garden, the garden music.
That's good, and that's good too.
The birds and the squirrels. So, thank you. Just before we move to the part 2, if any of you have insights, quick comments you want to drop into the chat, that would be for the good of the group. That would be. I got a whole pile of stuff going on. So just take a moment to put, yeah. That's a resounding response. Okay. So you're typing, Margot. Carry on. Just with too much. Avon Pathways, do you want to come out and just say something briefly? One thing. I know there's a lot. Cancer can kind of take everything, but if we could find one thing that you would like to share. And then Margot, you can do next. A quick one.
It would just be very brief.
Yeah, thank you.
First of all, thank you. Was just very aware of the focus of identification, and that this is the point of synthesis of the energies from Aries, Taurus, and Gemini coming into that one pointed aspect through Cancer, and how our identification with the soul affects not only each individual, but also the one humanity and the soul of each nation.
Just let that sit. You can breathe that in. Margot?
Thank you, Sharon. As I sat there in the silence, there was a sense of moving up into a new world, a new awareness. I had a sense of you there, Sharon, as if you were greeting, and then saw this enormous choir and standing in this choir. And we started to sound. And at first there was a bit of dissonance, and then we came into harmony. And then I could sense this a new frequency. It was almost like it was scanning my being, and as a result of that, there was a strong sense of an upliftment of a higher, finer note. And then shortly after that, Michael said, a focused, immovable will, and registering this new point of tension. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael and Sharon.
So as you have thoughts, please continue to put them in the chat or keep them to yourself. We'll come back. But right now I'd like to move on to the practical, what is the next right step or the next right thing, or what is, as Claire would use, next indicated step in this process. And I think, Kathy, you alluded to the beginning of it beforehand. So let's start with you. Where we've got some ideas. Let's fill them out a bit.
Well, I was picking up on something Michael was saying in the meditation. I don't know, I think that's what he said, about being open to changing our point of view. And I think that's something that the whole new group of world servers is being charged with, because Uranus is going through our sign, right? Uranus, the planet of unexpected change, revolution, reorientation, is going through the sign of Taurus, which is the ruling energy of the new group of world servers. And so, at least for me, this has been a process of reorientation during this time. And if we do also remember that Libra rules this period, as I mentioned earlier, it's governed esoterically, therefore most importantly, by that energy of Uranus, which also governs the seventh ray and Aquarius. So we're in a very Uranian energy right now, and it's a very exciting time, right? It's very exciting to be confronted with having to look at our lives and look at the world situation, look at our approach to esotericism in new ways. So I think the next step for the group as a whole is to be open to these Uranian moments of change and impact.
And what are some of them you're seeing? Some of those moments of change that are standing out for you that might help us?
Well, I just think there's a lot of shifting among the political views. I don't know that much about what's going on in the field of religion, so I can't say that. But it's a reflection, I guess, of something I read yesterday. It reminded me of this situation. The Tibetan said that the complexity of this time is related really to the fact that humanity in large numbers is, for the first time in our history, being impacted by ideas, because our minds are awakening. The masses, we're talking about masses here, the masses are awakening to ideas, good, not so good ideas, but there's this uprising of the mental and emotional bodies of humanity. And so it's only natural that there's going to be all this conflicting energies going back and forth.
Michael, you have some
I
thoughts?
think that's well said, Kathy. And the factor about Uranus is that it is the ruler of occult mind, as I understand it anyway. So it will bring a new perspective. And, you know, even though in our coming age, it is considered the orthodox planet, changing many things for many people on many levels. You know, there are many mundane things that are going on here too. Just climatic shifts and changes in the flora and fauna, and the somehow the migrations that may be necessary. When you look at the weather patterns, they are astonishingly different in a way that is very challenging. With the process of using occult mind and persuading, convincing, demonstrating, illustrating its value to so many reactionary people. They call themselves, okay, conservatives, but that's a very dignified word. It's really a reactionary kind of response. But if they can be persuaded that the way ahead is promising, and that's up to the educative new group of world servers to do that, then we will have a factor which in Cancer is prominent, and it is the factor of integration. Someone just said earlier, well, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, and finally, you put that together as an integrated wholeness. It represents, in a way, the entire integrated personality. Right now, there really is a counterforce at work, but from that challenge, as Master Moria says, well, he says many things, but he says, when will you at last realize that obstacles are possibilities? And I say that to myself also. We're faced with so many obstacles and divergent points of view due to our spiritual heredity. Now, if people in this reactionary group can be convinced that the way ahead is more promising than clinging to the rigidities of illusion, the old unsuccessful ways into which they are frozen, and the various glamours which veil the truth and send us off passionately in the wrong direction. If these things can be overcome, then we can really move ahead, and I want to use this word specifically, into the archetypal promise. The archetypal promise of the planet Uranus, of all planets, this planet, which really is the most powerful in Aquarius, veiled by the moon along with Neptune and Vulcan, but Uranus always is on top. If we can meditate so that we fasten onto the archetype, which is representing the divine plan, then we can all move ahead in a Cancerian integrated manner. Right now we have disintegration everywhere. It exists in ourselves. It exists in our groups. It exists in our communities. It exists in our nations. And finally, and most importantly, it exists in humanity. It's not yet integrated. And Cancer is the great sign which brings things together into a coherent whole, so that as a really responsive personality, we can move forward into the Uranian archetypal promise of the future. Right now, things are a bit of a mess. And in the conditioned world, which is not yet the archetypal world, all kinds of conflicted and erroneous conditions exist. Uranus can straighten all that out if we can move together into its archetypal promise, and it begins with us. It begins even in our small groups, and then it will extend itself, and humanity will succeed. We start with us now. That is something that can be done, and we make sure that as much as possible we live the archetypal life. Whatever that means for you, you've got to figure it out. I've got to figure it out. We start to live the archetypal life, which ensures, finally, that we are under the purpose and under the plan, and that what we do is really purpose and plan centered. That's what I think is how do we call it? The next right thing. Try to live in your own life, I in my life, whatever, the archetypal life, under purpose, under plan, and reorganizing, that's Uranus, right? Reorganizing everything in the lower worlds according to the higher archetypes, which we begin to sense when we get the Uranian vibration. I'll leave it at that.
Kathy, do you have anything? I've just got questions going all off in my head, but you go ahead.
Well, I think this whole Uranian energy that's governing now is also being challenged by a strong Neptunian influence, especially under Cancer, of course, but governing this time when Neptune is going through its ruling energy of Pisces. You know, it's not coincidental that this energy is governing this final approach to 2025, what this group is all about. We're having to contend on the one hand with the retrogressive energies that this Neptunian energy is pouring into our world, which is creating in all of us, we'd all have to say to some extent that this is a period of so much conflicting ideas that it's confusing for us to sort it all out, you know? So I think on the one hand, you know, Uranus is good for bringing clarity, we might say, but we're also, it's not the only thing that's ruling. We're dealing with not only this immediate period of Neptunian energy, but this whole outgoing age governed by this energy creates a lot of confusion. The promise of Neptune, the higher aspect of Neptune, of course, is a transcendental ability to align with the soul. But in each one of us, perhaps we're having to contend with what do I really believe? What is true? And so what is the next step amidst all of this glamour that we're swimming in? So it's not really hard to know. It's not hard to decide, but the Tibetan always tells us that all we have to know is what our next step is. So we have to bring it all home to the immediate task before us all. And I think that is to get some clarity, you know.
And I think Neptune brings imagination. It also brings illusion and that confusion. Yeah. And as I'm listening to this, you know, talking about archetypal life and how big that is, and that we all need to do a part, you know, and there are so many ways, as Michael said, that things are disintegrated.
Yeah.
And it sometimes feels in those large ideas a little challenging to pick one.
Yeah.
You know, to really, you know, what is the next thing for us within all of the things that are possible. I think that's where I get lost, is that it feels like it's so overwhelming and there's so much to do and so much that needs to change. And anybody else feel that?
Well, if I can say just for a moment, in meditation number 4 in Discipleship Volume 2, it's dealing with your particular part in the divine plan. And the repeated use of that meditation, the larger context of Shambhala and hierarchy are mentioned preliminarily, but then it comes right down to your part. And I want to say about Neptune that it is the planet of pralaya, and especially when it's in the sign Pisces. And it represents the Christ. And if you think about it, we're going through a pralaya with respect to our old illusions and glamours and myopic chaos. What follows that, coming up, I think, in 2024 or thereabouts, is Neptune the Christ is in the sign Aries. Aries, the sign of beginnings. Now, I'm not going so far as to say the reappearance of the Christ can occur then. I think at least another 100 years is needed. But the preparation for the real emergence of the Christ follows the Neptunian pralaya, and we're all going to understand it. Wherever there is a withering of the law and an uprising of lawlessness on all sides, then I manifest myself for the destruction of such as do ill and the preservation of those who do good. Something like that at the end. So let's work with this planet of intuition, Neptune, by building the Antakarana properly, and then we can get beyond its lower glamorous demonstrations. Neptune and Uranus, they're, in some of the charts, they are the big ones. Those schemes are right up there by themselves. And they are the major players in this particular solar system and in the one to come. So we have to be, as you know, both the mystic, the sensitive, the intuitive, and at the same time, the occultist with a powerful, penetrating occult mind of the kind, obviously, Master DK has. We've got to work with both of them.
Kathy, anything else?
Well, it just brings to mind that aphorism of the Tibetans that he says should guide our lives. Let reality govern my every thought and truth be the master of my life. So I think we all have to search out reality, what's real, as you're doing in this group, and truth, which is also one of your key themes. So what is truth? It's not so easy to see today. It's not so easy.
Are there any questions or particular comments from the participants? We do have some space here. I'm imagining there's a lot going on in your minds that might be, you have the opportunity now if you'd like to. Yeah, it'd be really helpful if you just would, it's best to put in the chat for me. I can see Sanjay come on out on mute, and it's helpful for me if you put it in the chat, like I have a question or a comment, because then I can see it more more easily. So Sanjay, come on out.
Yes, thank you, Sharon, for the wonderful session that you're organizing. Just wanted to ask Michael, if you can just elaborate on the present solar system and the one to come. So very mystical words for me.
Well, we can put together what Master DK says. This is the 5th solar system right now, and the second major solar system ruled by particularly the second ray at this time. Rays 5 and 2 go together quite admirably when we come to the idea of the solar angel. So in this solar system, the personality ray of the solar god is also the second ray. The soul is the second ray. And the monad, for whatever influence it may have, maybe not too much yet, is a 4th ray demonstration moving to the second ray. So everything about love, wisdom, and initiation up to at least the cosmic 4th degree, maybe the 5th, but for sure the 4th, is going on in this solar system. In the next solar system, the solar ray does not change. It is still the second ray. The monad moves more and more into activity on the second ray. And the personality, in my view anyway, becomes the first ray. It is the 6th solar system and the 3rd major solar system. And it begins with the entire theme of will and purpose. As a matter of fact, the individualization of man, in such as man will be at that time, takes place on the monadic plane. So it's the personality ray that is basically changing from the second ray personality in this second major solar system, a love wisdom system, to the first ray personality in the next system. And then there's some kind of seventh. It's an obscure reference, but it's the idea that everything is put together in the eternal now. Now, perhaps many of us, I can't say all of us, will choose a path which will make of us solar angels on the path to Sirius. And then it would be likely that our return to the scope of influence of our solar logos would be in the next solar system, supervising the kind of humanity that will then begin to appear. But we will be equipped to do that. Now, this could be a long way off. It depends on what chronology you believe. Blavatsky says that the Hindu chronology is correct, and that we're halfway through, and that a solar system externally and internally lasts about 300, am I correct? 300 trillion years, something like that. Not billions, it's into the trillions, 310, something like that. The time spans are just mind-boggling. And some people who study with Sri Yukteswar, Yogananda's teacher, feel that those time spans are too elaborate, too extended. But no, Blavatsky insists they are accurate. So let's just say maybe 150 something trillion years have elapsed in the duration of this solar system, and trillions of years are to come, and we will be involved, most likely, in the next solar system. Many of us as solar angels, but others of us on different paths that can still be helpful and influential. And as far as that mysterious synthesis of the seventh solar system, I think we'll just have to let that go, except it all takes place in what's called the eternal now. And we have to find our way into the eternal now. And there are ways of doing that meditatively. You know, when I offer these courses on identification as being, the eternal now is a big subject. So, you know, let's slowly move forward and at least do this. Develop the spiritual will in this solar system. Let's at least do that.
Thank you, Sanjay and Michael. Beautiful. Thank you. Annette, could you come out and say something about, you had a question about women's role now is shifting. I'm not quite sure what, do you have a question that you could ask? Annette, come on out. And if you can, video would be great. Maybe Kathy, you might be able to, you have some thoughts.
Yes, I would ask what you could say about the role of women in the world. It is shifting, so we all these demonstrations and also to get equal rights. Is that something about the Aquarian age? And also all these groups are primarily women. Is there occult reason for that?
Kathy, just some thoughts?
Well, I think, to me at least, the primary reason why women are becoming increasingly prominent in the world is because of education. You know, for the large percentage of human history, women were not educated. They were not allowed to be educated. And so therefore, of course, they didn't have much ability or aptitude to do anything else but be housekeepers. And, you know, so now it's a time when women are educated, and increasingly they shouldn't, why shouldn't they be able to handle all of the same roles that men participate in? But I've always thought, despite having said that, the Tibetan has a curious statement about women. He doesn't speak much about that aspect of life, leaving it up to us to decide. But he does say something quite curious. He says that as we move into Aquarius, men will change their attitude towards women. He doesn't say that women will change their attitude towards men, although I'm sure that will also be part of it. But he says men will change their attitude towards women, and women will change their attitude towards their destiny. And so that brings to my mind the question, what is the destiny of women? He seems to be alluding with that point that it's not the same as the destiny of a man. There's something different for a woman to do. So, you know, there's been a lot of statements these days that women who come into positions of power model themselves as on the model of men, you know, and perhaps the Tibetan is indicating that there's a different, a unique destiny, a feminine destiny that women have to strive to figure out what it is now that we've been, quote unquote, liberated. What do we do? How do we express that liberation in ways that are in alignment with our destinies?
Thank you, Kathy. I hope that helps. Annette, beautiful way to look at that. You know, women in leadership is changing a lot these days too. I'm noticing that in business. Yeah.
If I
Michael.
can say one
Sure.
thing, the study of reincarnation is going to occur under the sign Cancer. And when the either alternation of the sex of the body is proven, the Tibetan said, well, look, I've been an Oriental and mostly in masculine incarnations, but that's not true for everybody. Let's just say that when people get some kind of idea about their history and the changeability of the instrument, I think that there will be significant changes regarding this factor of imitation. I think it's not a mistake. Well, okay, actually I have to quote Master Moria. Women are bringing in the new age. Just absolutely point blank, he says it. And when you look at the receptive quality of people, let's just call them people, within a feminine body, it is suitable to receive, as Helena Roerich did, as HPB did, as Alice Bailey did, the teaching from the higher levels. So that's going to be that receptive quality. And I think it's in education in the New Age, well, maybe not, but he talks about yes, it's in the discussion of the new schools. and the role women would play. And he says they bring a receptive, sympathetic, compassionate, understanding quality. But we have to remember that people are just people. Sometimes you may have a feminine body, sometimes a masculine body. Maybe it has something to do with the rays, which are largely expressing through us. But we can't think in an ironclad way. I am a woman. I am a man. I am both. And the instrument is what is varying. And when people studying reincarnation under cancer begin to realize that this is the case, and that the sex of the body can be whatever for the purpose that the solar angel determines to be correct, then we will have a much more relaxed point of view about being a man or being a woman. We're none of those things, really. We're not a man. We're not a woman. We are a radiant internal soul growing through the experience of using an instrument which is sometimes feminine and sometimes masculine. And we will hold less tightly to I am this than we do right now. Right now, we seem to want to prove a point, but it's not an accurate point. Once reincarnation is proven, and it will be before long, he tells us it is the great Cancerian study.
Thank you. Okay. Wow. What a great conversation. This has been really beautiful for me. I hope those of you who are here have gotten something out of it. Let's just do a little release, and you can actually physically do that. It will just help release what's any thoughts, release the tension, release what's happened. Doesn't it feel better? You can do that in your offices too. And let's take 30 seconds to 39 or 43 seconds in silence. And this would be a time where you might write down, the thing you really want to work on. If you want to work on this for the next month, if there is something particularly you want to remember, if that works for you, a keynote, a quote, an idea, that for it to be your keynote between now, and it to be the mala bead between now and our full moon in August. And so we'll just go into silence for a few moments as you choose and hold on. Thank you. So we have a little bit of time now just to kind of pull everything together to summarize. I don't know if Kathy or Michael have a particular salient idea they would like us to get. And but we do have a few minutes for that, or for questions, any more questions or comments. Perhaps you would like to, again, this is a group work, and what one person shares is also useful for the rest of the group. So we'll leave a few minutes open in the chat to see what has come. Yes, Michael, do you have something to say?
I understand that when you have the curse of Mercury on the midheaven, what are you going to do? Anyway, I have one sentence that when I think of cancer and the best you can get out of it, it's simply this: the whole is seen as one. However you get there, that is the prize in cancer, to me at least. The whole is seen as one.
Brief but full, Michael. Thank you. Kathy?
I guess when I think of the next period, you know, if we look at it as the outbreathing time after the higher interlude, it's all governed in the three signs, at least in part by Neptune. And so this Cancerian Neptunian energy carries through to Leo and also to Virgo. And so I guess the Tibetan calls it fluid. You know, it's a fluid area. And therefore, if we are to embody the higher archetypes in our lives, it's good for us to remain fluid and receptive to the higher influences, rising above the lower watery sphere of glamour and illusion and into the Christ energy and at this time of outpouring, you know, remaining fluid.
Thank you. Anyone else? You're a chatty group, aren't you? Okay then, so we will bring this, our day to a close. I'll just hand this over to Sasha, and just so that we are creating, as you know, this is an experimental format for us. We're trying to create the bookends that will be consistent. Claire, I guess, I don't know if you had anything else to say before we go on to the last bit. So what we'll do is, after we just finish this piece, Sasha will give us some admin and seeing what's happening coming up. Daniela will close with the Gayatri, and then at that moment we'll have a little music, and we ask you to leave the garden. Kathy and Michael, if you just stay with us, that would be great. But please leave in a timely manner, taking your goodies with you and your conversations, and we will see you at the next one. So. Claire, do you have anything to finish off or summary?
I was thinking, thank you both, Michael and Kathy, so much for the placed on the table in the space between us all this morning. But I was thinking too of one of our co-workers and friends, Bayo Akumalafe, said, the times are urgent, we need to slow down. And there is that, you know, in order to be receptive, we need to slow down. And I was just struck by that. Came through for me quite a lot while you were both speaking and the questions from the group. And also, Michael, what you said about the invitation of polarization being integration. You know, I think on a very nuts and bolts level, in our day-to-day lives, how easy it is to love when it's easy to love. The real challenge and the real invitation is to love when it's not easy to love. Because, you know, it takes us back to that idea of in situations of polarity or conflict, what's the most important thing? To be listening, compassionate and kind, or to be perceived to be right? So these are just some of the things that were coming through while you were talking. So thank you so much for what you've brought us today. And to everyone.
Yeah. Antonella, come on out. Antonella, please. Love to hear your voice.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
Where is my video? Here it is. Yeah.
There you are.
So I read what I wrote. I will keep this thought. The new group of world servers holding the mind steady in the light, and also the heart sound in the love. will integrate the human effort towards the humanity as one. So we are really that bridge that has to do that, especially now in this bridging two ages, bridging this presence of Uranus in Taurus and Saturn in Aquarius. So their square in this year is really taking the battle towards a peak. So it's really maybe the worst aspect before the 2025, if we can say that. So in 2025, Saturn will join Neptune at 0° Aries. So it's really a great hope for a new age of a planned community or an intelligent communion, or yeah, a new one humanity with this creative intelligence of Saturn that will enter Aries in 2025. So let's hope that, let's assert that. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. And I think of the expression being 3 feet from gold, and where now we've had a lot of storms, so I've got a lot of wind. Being 3 feet from gold, where those who were digging in the mines kept digging and digging and digging, and they just didn't get to it and didn't get to it. So they just said, "I'm sorry, we give up." And they found out they were actually 3 feet from the goal. So it feels like to hold on, to keep steady in the light, to keep sound in the heart, to keep going, to not give up, that we are there, and we will keep finding 3 feet of gold, over the next, it's not just one. Yeah.
Yeah. Because if we don't do that, who will?
Who will? Yeah. Thank you, Antonella. Okay, so, Daniela or Sasha, over to you, my friend.
Can I just interrupt for a second? Sorry, Sasha. If I share my screen, do we lose all our video windows?
No, go ahead. Yes, please.
But will we lose our video contact? Because it's so lovely being in the group. It's such a strong group field when we can see each other. What will I do?
Do you know what might be nice just for now, Sasha, if you can unpin all of us, and if we all go into gallery view and just take a moment to see everyone, pop up your video. Come on, we want to see everyone. And just scroll through and then wave. Send light and love. Here we are. It's good to see faces with the names, even if it's just for a little bit. Great. All right, we realize for some of you it's very late or very early. There we go. Okay, so let's remember to do that, please. So Claire, go ahead.
Yeah, the screen.
Yes, love it. And then over to you, Sasha.
Sasha.
Yeah, thank you, friends. And together we building this radiant field of the group, the world group, and this is our work for the coming years. And thank you for us doing it together. And it's not just one meeting we have; it's continuous process of holding the group field and meditating, sharing, receiving impressions, and radiating them forth. So we would appreciate if you share your further impressions, but also your impressions about this format of work. As Sharon said, it's an experiment, and we continue trying to find the form that would be optimal to create the space for that process, that we would continuously hold our connectivity as a group and build a lighted house together. So please share those thoughts. And in this cycle of Cancer, we bring our focus to the one of three main prerequisites for the reappearance of the Christ, and we hold a meditation on the topic of cleaning the house of religion and politics. So, and that's the topic for our meditation for the common good in this cycle. And please join that meditation. And the new moon webinar will be on July 10th. And if you're interested in this topic, please contact us and join the Action Area group working on this topic. Over to you, Daniela.
Okay. O thou who givest sustenance to the universe, from whom all things proceed, and to whom all things return, unveil to us the face of the true spiritual sun, hidden by a disk of golden light, so that we too may know the truth and do our whole duty as we journey to thy sacred feet. Thank you.
Tatsavitur Varenya Bargo Devasya Dimahi Dio Yona Prachodaya Om Bhuvaswa Tatsavitur Varenya Bargo Devasya Dimahi Dio Yona Prachodaya Om Bhuvaswa Tatsavitur Varenya Bargo Devasya Dimahi Dio Yona Prachodaya Om Bhuvaswa Tatsavitur Varenya Bargo Devasya Dimahi Dio Yona Prachodaya Om Bhuvaswa Tatsavitur Varenya Bargo Devasya Dimahi Dio Yona Prachodaya Om Bhuvaswa Tatsavitur Varenya Bargo Devasya Dimahi Dio Yona Prachodaya Devasyati Mahidio Yona Prachodaya Om Bhuvasva Tatsavitu Varenyam Bargo Devasyati Mahidio Yona Prachodaya Bhuvasva Tatsavitu Varenyam Bargo Devasyati Mahi